Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into some highly surprising economic data coming directly from America's small businesses. If you really want the true pulse of the economy, you've got to forget Wall Street for a minute and look at Main Street. And the numbers that just came out for July, they are painting a picture that absolutely nobody saw coming. We're going to break down exactly what's happening on the ground using the latest National Federation of Independent Business, or NFIB, report.
Okay, let's kick things off with the headline figure, 99.8. Now that's not just some random statistic. It represents a massive, totally unexpected spike in the July NFIB Small Business Optimism Index. To really understand why this one number is turning so many heads across the financial world, we have to look at what everybody expected to happen versus what actually happened.
Section 1, the Optimism Surge, Shattering Expectations. So, market forecasters and economic analysts were betting on the index coming in at a pretty modest 97.5 for July. But instead, it rocketed up 2.4 points from the prior month to hit a staggering 99.8. A beat of this magnitude in economic data is incredibly rare. It basically tells us that the reality on the ground for small business owners is accelerating way faster than any of the predictive models anticipated.
To put that into perspective, let's look at the historical context. We had the prior month sitting at 97.4, and the 52-year historical average for this index is exactly 98.0. So this current July reading of 99.8, it absolutely towers over both of them. By crossing that 52-year average line, small business optimism has officially moved from subpar right back into historically strong territory. In fact, it's hitting its absolute highest level since August of 2025. This is a huge psychological breach. It signals to the markets that small businesses are no longer just in survival mode, they are shifting definitively back into growth mode.
And you know what's truly compelling here? This growth wasn't just isolated to a few lucky sectors. 8 out of the index's 10 individual components actually improved in July, while only 2 declined. I mean, that is the literal definition of a broad-based surge. It proves this isn't just some statistical fluke, it's a wide-reaching, undeniable shift in sentiment across almost every facet of running a small business.
Section 2, the twin engines, hiring and expanding.
Moving past the headline, we really need to look at what exactly is driving this renewed confidence. While the first engine is hiring demand, the NFIB Employment Index just rebounded to 102.1. And that's a massive deal, especially coming off 4 consecutive months of really troubling declines. For a third of a year, small businesses were pulling back on employment. Now, suddenly, they are showing a renewed, aggressive willingness to expand their workforces again.
The second engine driving this surge is capital expenditures. After periods of tight liquidity, businesses are finally committing capital to new equipment and expanding their capacity. This is a highly tangible leading indicator that owners are actively pricing in stronger future demand. They aren't just feeling optimistic, they are literally putting their money where their mouth is and locking in those capital allocations to back it up. NFIB chief economist Bill Dunkelberg really hits the nail on the head here. He sums up these twin engines perfectly, pointing out the significant increase in hiring expectations and those capital expenditures we just talked about. But right in the middle of his statement, he introduces our primary complication. He says, quote, "Although uncertainty is currently elevated." That phrase right there, that is the real pivot point of this entire report. Section 3, the Main Street Paradox. Optimistic, but anxious. Which brings us to a pretty stark figure, 91. The NFIB Uncertainty Index actually increased by 2 points in July to reach 91. So yes, owners are spending money and looking for workers, but they are simultaneously grappling with some major anxiety, proving that business owners are just as capable of multitasking their stress as the rest of us. To really grasp the scale of that anxiety, you have to consider the historical average for the Uncertainty Index, which is just 68. We are currently sitting all the way up at 91. When you contrast that current elevated state against the historical norm, it becomes abundantly clear that owners are highly conflicted. The data shows they're genuinely questioning whether right now is actually a safe time to expand, even as their own capital expenditure plans increase. And this all builds into a vicious, totally frustrating cycle on the ground. Think about it. Despite desperately wanting to hire, businesses simply cannot find suitable workers. That persistent labor shortage forces owners to pay a premium to attract talent, which drives upward pressure on wages and operating costs. The result? They're practically financially handcuffed, leaving them with a very limited ability to fully respond to the very consumer demand that's making them optimistic in the first place.
Section 4, the big picture, a positive prognosis.
So zooming out from all this granular data, when we weigh these conflicting signals, a surprisingly positive picture emerges. Headline optimism has officially broken above its long-term average, hiring plans have sharply rebounded, and capital expenditure expectations are up. Now, yes, elevated uncertainty and persistent labor shortages are heavy counterweights that complicate expansion, but ultimately, the data shows that a renewed willingness to invest is currently overriding Main Street's lingering anxieties.
Ultimately, decoding all of this leaves us with one really vital question to ponder. Is this massive 99.8 spike in optimism the definitive start of a long-term Main Street boom? Or is it just a temporary peak before those labor shortages and elevated operating costs finally take their toll? The numbers are telling us that businesses are ready to run, but the coming months will reveal if the track is actually clear. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep an eye on how these small business trends ripple out into the wider economy.